Thumbnailing is so important for comics, and honestly, all artwork and illustration, I think. Before going into a page, you should always plan out the general idea and composition of each panel and the layout of the page, meaning like the placement of panels. Without it, you might get to the inking stage and realize that your composition is confusing, your flow is off, and it leads your reader in all the wrong directions. I've gotten to that stage several times, where I'm halfway down a page and it's like, oh, this is a not good composition, I better edit this. And it takes a lot of scrapping it and redoing it and rethinking things. It adds a lot of extra time onto comics which are already very time consuming, where having little tiny sketches that you can quickly put down and then throw away and do a better version of it, that's super important for getting all your bad stuff out before you jump into, say, inking, which is a lot more permanent and time consuming. It's kind of like wireframing in web and app design. Sorry, I've been doing user experience and user interface stuff, so UX UI stuff at work, so I've been thinking about this. It's the same concept, because with wireframing, instead of focusing on the front end polish, so your colors and the shape of your buttons and what do your hyperlinks look like, or what are the pretty photos you're going to put on your website, you just focus on getting the user experience down and making sure that the user can find everything on the web page that they want. In comics, that translates to making sure that your reader gets to the next panel, and then the next panel, and then off the page to the next page. And they know what happened on that page. They're not confused about wait, who's that? Where did they go? Suddenly they're in a new room. What happened? You don't want them to be confused about what's going on, and you don't want them to stop reading because it's confusing. So yeah, thumbnailing and planning things out really lets you nip some of that stuff in the bud. I think there is merit to figuring stuff out on the go. There's nothing wrong with doodling and experimenting your way through a composition, even if that means your pencils are kind of your thumbnails. I know a lot of artists who do that, and they still do really nice work. So it's more it's like a detailed thumbnail that they work for a long time, and kind of explore their way to the final product. And that's fine, because you're still doing that discovery. You're not just going with your initial idea. At least I hope not. Yeah, you're not going with your initial idea, because your initial idea might not always be the best. Sometimes you strike gold, but most of the time it's oh, well, that composition didn't work out. Okay, new one. Because I recently was messing around in my sketchbook, and I was I'm gonna do some little mini comics, and I'm just gonna ink them, and I won't worry about thumbnailing or penciling. I'll just jump in and see where it goes. And they are so messy, and they don't make any sense, and I don't know what's going on in them. So it's really hard to do that. Not planning out a comic page is what's a good metaphor? It's like trying to build a house without a blueprint. It's stuff's gonna be weird. Good metaphor, so you got this. But yeah, maybe that's just not my work style, being able to jump right into a comic composition and come out with something really nice. Iteration, I always talk about in my videos, iteration is the best way to go, because you just get better and better with every new iteration. The other really important thing about thumbnails is they give you an overall picture of what everything will look like. And I think you might miss that if you jump right into pencils. Especially if you're not comparing your pages together. Because thumbnailing gives you a good overview of what each individual page looks like and how they look paired together. So if you're ever printing it in a book, or where you're going to have two pages side by side, or just looking at the overall arc of, say, a chapter or several pages or a scene, it's really great to be able to see how they all look together. And it's do they match stylistically? Am I doing weird random stuff that doesn't make sense with, say, my panel shape? Or you can use thumbnails to test out your colors so that you make sure every page has the same color profile. That's what I did with 9 Point. I sketched out all my compositions and thumbnails, and then I added colors over top to just test out okay, so this is the general color for this scene, and this is the general color for this scene. Do they all work together? Do they not? Is this one too dark? Is this one too light? Whatever. And it's a good way to look at everything before you've committed to anything. And thumbnailing can also help you with planning out your schedule for like updating or your workflow. Because if you know how many pages you need to do, and you know when your deadline is, you can really plan out your time management. If you're working off like an outline or like the outline of a script or like a script that you're writing on the go, it can be very helpful to have a plan to know when you need to like write out more script so you don't run out. When you draw without planning, it's really easy to go in the wrong direction and create extra work for yourself because you can always improve it with editing and iteration. As I say this, like I know there's probably people who don't do thumbnails at all and do really amazing work. Like they might just have a really good sense for composition, whatever it is. Like if that works for you, that's totally okay. Don't let me shame you for doing that. But if you've never used thumbnails, give it a try. I guess it's kind of like in writing. There's like outliners and there's pantsers. So outliners, you know, they outline everything before they actually write the story. So they know exactly what's going to happen. And then pantsers are people who kind of do it by the seat of their pants. Just write and see where the story takes them without any planning. It's also called discovery writing. So I think that can also work for artwork, because sometimes you need some of that spontaneity, I guess, in your work. But in comics, where things are very structured, at least like composition-wise and layout-wise, I think it's definitely, I think it's more like, it's one of those tried and true things. Like I said, it's a good overview to see where you're going in your work. Thumbnails are also really great to show like concepts to your collaborators as well. So like if I'm trying to draw out like what a page looks like and I'm having trouble with it, I can show Bones all my little sketches, and he can say like, this composition works, this one doesn't, without me having to spend hours working away at 2 different compositions to have one scrapped. So if you're working with a writer or creative partner, you know, you might be handing the thumbnails off to someone else to draw the full page. Or you might have to show your work to an editor who will pick it apart. Like, they're just super important, and they don't cost you much time or effort. So why not do them? They're for getting all your terrible ideas out and testing them, and you wasted 10 minutes instead of 5 hours. There you go. I find, too, that sometimes I'll have a really cool idea in my head for what I want a scene to look like or a certain shot, and then I'll draw it out, and it doesn't look as cool as it did in my head. So it's really important to see things executed before you commit to them. I mean, if you're working on tight, like, webcomic deadlines where you're like, I have to put out a page every Wednesday, this composition isn't working out, but I have to put it out by midnight tonight, you'll save yourself a lot of pain if you have that thumbnail there to test things out first. But yeah, I also do thumbnails for my illustration work. Whenever I do it especially for like traditional work, like at conventions, I do ink sketch commissions. So before I commit to doing a drawing, I want to make sure I know what I'm going to draw first. So I'll do a bunch of thumbnail sketches. They take 10 seconds each, and then I can pick a composition and know where I'm going. Because, you know, when you're committing ink to paper, it's permanent. You can't erase it. So yeah. I mean, I do underdrawings with my ink, but still, it's good to try out the bad ideas before committing. Thumbnails are great. I used to hate doing them too. I used to hate doing thumbnails. Like, it always felt like a waste of time, and like, sometimes they do take a while because you have to think about what you're doing. Whereas when you get to, say, the pencil or inking stage, you're just kind of like, you know what you're doing, you're just executing it. Where like when you thumbnail, you have to sit and read the script and think about it and like, what's the best composition here? How does this actually translate? Because I find when I picture stuff in my head, like when I'm reading a script, I imagine it a lot more animated. So you know, Bones will be like, they're walking down the street. And I'm like, so I just imagine 2 people walking down the street. It's like, oh, how does that translate into a static image? So yeah, I used to hate doing them because I hated that like translation from my brain to the paper. But I just learned to not think about it too much and just do several iterations. And it's gotten a lot easier. Thumbnails. I used to also have really crappy compositions when I hated doing thumbnails, so there you go. Maybe I just didn't want to do them because I thought they were hard. That's probably it. Anyways, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions or if you'd like to submit a video topic, please leave a comment down below. I'll be answering all the art questions, and Bones will answer all the writing questions. Thank you so much for listening. Once again, I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye!